back to the Satoshi Chain. My name's Adam, and also known as Bitcoin Jesus. So I'm out here. Just want to make another video. Canada Crypto Week was actually completed last week, so didn't send an update there. I went to a blockchain futurist conference. Also had a ticket for a dev ticket for Consensus, but wasn't able to go. Started a new job, so they did not want me to miss those days. I really asked them to move it out, and I didn't understand actually that Consensus changes cities every year. So this was the first and potentially only time for a very long time that Toronto will have the Consensus conference. So very unfortunate state of events that I missed that. I was able to go to a few after parties and talk with some people. And throughout the week, the main thing that I wanted to talk to people about was the value of Bitcoin. I think I've got my Element Bitcoin shirt on that I custom made. A lot of people actually were interested in the shirt, so it might be a good idea for me to see if I can get them printed at some sort of reasonable price and offer them. I think people were saying $20, $30 price range they would purchase, but again, at a custom shirt, it's hard to get at such a cheap price. So, but I might make a few. I guess I'd have to I'd have to also size them out, right? Small and medium and large, so it gets a little bit complicated. Everyone gets a large. That's the way we're gonna roll. So one of the main things I talked to people about was the value of Bitcoin. And again, just to set the stage here, there's a lot of activity going on with the Web3 space, whether it's stable coins or real world assets, RWA, bringing on, ETFs and different kind of derivatives onto the blockchain. And actually, just on that note, I believe China's digital yuan, there's reporting now that they're actually leveraging some blockchain technology, probably a private one that they've developed themselves, but nonetheless, they're using blockchain technology to essentially combat the SWIFT system. And the idea is, this is all new information. I could maybe put a link up, I don't know, that they're able to settle transactions in 7 seconds, right, as opposed to 3 to 5 days with the SWIFT network. Again, a lot of that's based off of trust, and we've talked about that here on the Satoshi chain before. It's costly to create arbitrary ad hoc systems of trust using third-party individuals as gatekeepers of that trust to move funds between nation states that might not trust each other. And of course, if you can derive trust out of the tech infrastructure itself, right, which is what blockchain proposes, you can derive a lot of the trust from there. You can make it a lot more efficient because you can get rid of the need for having third-party trusted and verified entities within the system, basically middlemen. So Web3 space is growing. I met the people who are from DeLorean Labs. They're bringing back the DeLorean. As far as I understand, what I met the co-founder. They have the rights to the DeLorean, the famous I think 1980s car that was featured in Back to the Future, defunct brand at this point, but they bought the rights to it. They're bringing it back. They're making new DeLoreans with the blueprint. I think they might be electric, I'm not sure, but they are fully blockchain enabled vehicles, meaning that the ownership of the vehicle will be on the blockchain. I don't know if it's an ERC20 token, like an ETH token, or if it's a Solana token. And whenever the car gets to go get a checkup, they're going to actually update the token on the blockchain by having the onboard machine send an update to the blockchain network. And they've configured it such that it's the same analytics tool that the service workers do when they plug into the car. They open up like the side of the car, I think in the front port where the wheel is, and they plug in this tool that can do the readings. So at that point in time, when the service worker is done, the blockchain itself will update. So the kilometers driven, I know different metrics for cars. I'm not a big car enthusiast, but it was an interesting project nonetheless, and I wish them well. But there's a lot of stuff going on in the Web3 space. And again, I'm asking people, but Bitcoin's reached all-time highs as of this week. So, right now it's at 109,000 USD, and it was up to 111. I think a lot of people, including myself, are kind of waiting for 120, 150 to roll around. We still haven't seen the blow off top for this market cycle. I've lived through 2 of them, and that's going to be a 3 to 6 month period where, Bitcoin goes into the orange and red danger zone for the Bitcoin rainbow chart, which would be, the orange at the time, by October, the orange is going to be 180,000 USD. So we'll see how quickly we get into that orange zone. But if we wait too long, that's actually going to be the price that's expected. And after Bitcoin kind of hits this price, dings this price, bounces off this price, the altcoins are going to explode, and Bitcoin will go into a bit of a retreat. The altcoins, a lot of money will cycle into the altcoins. We'll see all-time highs for ETH, probably. That's a big one to watch for. Solana will see an all-time high. I'm guessing $800 Canadian Solana. Previous all-time high was like 250 Canadian, American. So yeah, probably around the $600 range for Solana in terms of American, 800 Canadian. And the list goes on and on. I mean, you choose your favorite shitcoin. But again, the reason why I was talking to all these people at the conferences and at the kind of after events and after party events was about Bitcoin. What's going on with Bitcoin? Why is it worth right now? Like, why is the market cap of Bitcoin 2 point something trillion dollars? And why can we all of us here predict in the not so distant future it might be even $10 trillion, right? And you don't have to take that prediction. That was how I was framing it. We can simply go from the fact that it had a market cap of a few mil to a few bill to now a couple trill. Like, what is it about Bitcoin that's causing this to happen? And the number one answer I got was it's like first mover. It's like marketing. It's marketing and kind of people just FOMOing and marketing and first mover advantage. And I'm always saying to people, how far can that explanation get you, right? Like, so does it get you from 1 million to 100 million market cap, or 100 million to 3 billion market cap, or 3 billion to 100 billion market cap? But does it go infinitely? Like, this explanation is just the first mover advantage, and people are dumb and FOMOing. How? And also we've got institutions now who are institution grade investors, who are very sophisticated investors, who are now stepping into this and creating products and derivatives around it. So it's possible that they're all kind of dumb and they're all following the FOMO phase. But I think that this is unlikely. And so I was trying to ask people, what is the actual value prop behind Bitcoin? Which is, just to be clear, it is Bitcoin dominance, and I'll explain what that is, goes from 70% to 40% during the market swings. And what that means is how much Bitcoin's market cap is relative to everything else. So when Bitcoin is 70% market cap, it means that for all the crypto space, Bitcoin and everything else, all the other tokens, Bitcoin is 70% of that in the entire pie. So it's massive. That's called Bitcoin dominance. And then Bitcoin dominance goes down as the altcoins start ramping up, which we usually see in small spikes, the 3 to 6 month spikes, and those are called altcoin seasons. And when that happens, Bitcoin's dominance, even though Bitcoin's price might not be going down, the dominance of Bitcoin is going down because all the market caps of everything else is going up. And so we'll see it swing, in a kind of altcoin season, you'll see Bitcoin go all the way down to 40% market cap, which is what we've seen historically, I think for the past two, something like that, the past two bull runs, when altcoin season kind of finally gets there. So these are all just terminologies. They're not, altcoin season is just an idea. Web3 is just jargon, but I'm just explaining what it means. It does have meaning for the people in the space. So, we have to ask ourselves, why does Bitcoin have 70% market cap? Prior to ETH, it was like 90%. So the 2017 is when, the altcoins really took off. So Bitcoin's never gone up to 90% again. So it's hovering between 70 and 40%, and it'll probably get to 70% by the next bear market again, just because the altcoins will take such a massive beating. And so the question is, underpinning this whole space, I know you're talking about RWA stuff, and you're talking about crypto, like research fi and DeFi, and having research papers on blockchain, and having DeFi protocols where you can swap coins indefinitely and maybe even create derivatives off them, and have options trading on crypto, and having lending and loaning platforms, staking. Like, I know all this stuff is very exciting, right? And putting the DeLorean up as a car, that's the first kind of tokenized car where your ownership is on the blockchain. It's all cool. But this whole space is being not just, I guess, just underpinned. It's fully supported by Bitcoin and the innovation that was Bitcoin. So what is that? And again, a lot of people think that it's simply like some accidental feature. And I through talking with people, I got a little bit more clear on on my thinking. So I'll actually start this part of the conversation by saying I did watch a podcast where it was on, it was a YouTube video, and the guests and the hosts were talking about almost the inevitability of Bitcoin, and the proposition was that it is possible that in any sufficiently advanced civilization, at a certain point in growth in that civilization, assuming that they had some abstract unit of account similar to money, so assuming that they were doing trade, that they had something recognizable to an economy that we have, even if it operates on slightly different principles, that they were doing trade and kind of commerce type activities, which again I think could also be assumed if you're sufficiently advanced technology civilization. I think that part of the reason you get that advance is because you have the ability to organize, and to communicate and organize, and that like work together basically. And so that makes it very likely that you would have some sort of economic backing. If we abstract economic backing far enough out, it really is just the ability for individuals, or groups of individuals, to exchange value, like this ambiguous value between each other, in a like highly liquid way, or a non-commodity based way, like that commodities that deteriorate, like oil or wheat or something like that. So a very abstract value token that they can move around across each other. And I don't think it's that unreasonable to think that any society that got sufficiently advanced would have that underpinning, would have that. They would probably have language. I mean, this is philosophically controversial, but they probably have some way of expressing ideas to each other. Maybe they wouldn't have an idea of other. Maybe they'd be a hive mind. That's in science fiction. That's very popular. But they probably would have some way of expressing ideas to each other, and they would probably have that method because they evolutionarily needed to coordinate with each other and work together. And at that point, again, it's not too much of a stretch to say, well, they probably had some sort of tokenized unit for expressing value moving across each other and being able to store that value and use it at a different time. And this is the technology of money. It's the invention basically. And so the proposition was, if there's a society, a sufficiently advanced society in different parts of the galaxy or even universe that have evolved to a sufficient level of intelligence, they probably have some unit of money. And if they have some unit of money, given a long enough period of time, they've probably developed a true money, or an honest money, that's based off of conversion of energy into value, basically, which is what Bitcoin is. Sorry, there's a plane passing by. So the idea again is that they probably have some sort of token that is related to money, and then they probably figured out the ability to have kind of pure money, or ultra hard money, or whatever you'd like to call Bitcoin. At the end of the day, the way that I think about it is um, a money that is not nation state owned, that is fully verifiable and fully secure, and is predicated on energy usage, which can't be cheated or obscured or faked. So and which has like definitive scarcity built right in. Gold has scarcity, but not definitive insofar as technically you could find another gold mine, and so the inflation rate of gold is not perfectly known to us. Whereas with Bitcoin, it's algorithmically set to adjust at certain blocks, and the blocks are algorithmically set to be settled every 10 minutes. So you basically know when the halving is about to occur approximately, and so when the incoming daily supply is going to be halved, and you also know the finite amount of Bitcoin. So again, the proposition from this podcast is that advanced technologies, civilizations probably have developed something like a Bitcoin. It doesn't have to be called Bitcoin. It doesn't have to look like our Bitcoin, but it's an energy derived currency unit that is, in virtue of it being energy derived, transmissible instantaneously, and based off of something true and sacred, and not within the hands of organizations or individuals or nation states, whatever these kind of alien civilizations would have. And so with that in mind, I do think of kind of many worlds theory, where I do think that although, well, let me take a step back. It's when I'm saying Bitcoin is inevitable, or these people on the podcast are saying Bitcoin is inevitable, that this CPU intensive or energy intensive monetary unit is inevitable because it is true and virtuous in a way that no other monetary system is, but also has higher utility than something like gold. When I'm saying that it's inevitable, I'm not saying that the exact specifics of Bitcoin are inevitable, right? What I'm not saying is that the blocks have to settle every 10 minutes, or that the transaction size has to be 7 seconds, seven transactions per second, like the throughput. And I'm not saying that it has to have 21 million Bitcoin, which is something that I did when I was talking to people. They were asking like, so you say that Bitcoin is so necessary, but there's all these seemingly arbitrary things about it. And my reply upon thinking about it was that I don't need to justify all of these potentially arbitrary things. That if I looked and found out that there's really no good reason why Bitcoin has 21 million tokens, and Bitcoin actually has satoshis, so it's like 200, 210 quadrillion satoshis, whatever it is. But sure, let's just talk about Bitcoins, and still it's an arbitrary thing. Like, why does it have that many satoshis? Why does it have that many Bitcoin? I don't think I need to answer that. What I need to do is, in a way, have this many worlds theory, many worlds, yeah, conversation about Bitcoin, where it's like, in all the universes or parallel universes where humans exist, or right, we go to the galaxy thing, and all across the different galaxies of the universe, there are intelligent beings. How many of them would create something that has the attributes like Bitcoin? And so, yes, it's accidental that we live in the universe where Bitcoin is viewed in the color orange, and it has the B logo everyone's familiar with, and the transaction sizes are this and the block sizes are that. And by the way, that could have been altered during Bitcoin's history. There was the block wars where people were trying to suggest that more information be stored within a block, and so there was like hard forks that happened. Bitcoin Cash was one of the hard forks that happened around this time, I believe. And there's been talks throughout Bitcoin's history of modifying the arbitrary parameters that it has, like the size and the settlement size, and of course there's trade-offs for doing that. There's security trade-offs and such, but in the end, what I can say is that it doesn't matter if we live in a universe where we did change Bitcoin in that way. In fact, we already have changed Bitcoin in a bunch of ways. There's been updates to the network. SegWit is one of them. I think Taproot is another one. That optimized the blockchain or allowed for extra functionality on top of Bitcoin. So when I'm saying that Bitcoin is inevitable, it's not that one exact permutation of Bitcoin is inevitable, but rather that some permutation was inevitable. And that's really the point of this video. Maybe I should have said that earlier on. But it's the idea that some version of Bitcoin was inevitable. And talking about many worlds conversation, if we think about many worlds where people lived like humans but are not quite us, they're just slightly different with slightly different histories, and we get like all these worlds together. And of course, you have in many worlds talk, you have all the different worlds, and there's like different quadrants. So there's universes where they're more similar, and then across the kind of uh, space of many worlds talk, there would be universes that are quite dissimilar. And many of those universes would be empty. There would be no intelligent life to begin with, because the parameters of the universes um, were not sufficient for life. So many of the worlds don't have any life, and they're very far away from ours. And you get closer and closer, and there's worlds that look more close to us in terms of the physical constants of the universe. And then you get to a certain quadrant, wherever it is. Maybe it's not in this corner, it's visually, it could be anywhere, it doesn't matter. Like there's a quadrant, a subsection quadrant, where all these universes are pretty similar, and they have creatures like humans that live on it. And many of those universes are quite similar to us. The humans actually look pretty similar to us, or human stars, or human asterisks, or whatever you'd like to call them. They're human, but not quite us, not quite what we mean by human here. And the question is, how many of these subsections in this quadrant would develop something like Bitcoin? And that's really the proposition that I have, is that when we talk about Bitcoin being inevitable, it's not that, again, that orange B logo thing where it's called Bitcoin, it's got 21 million. It's how many civilizations would likely have eventually developed a peer-to-peer removal of middleman, purely digital native token that's based off of energy. And again, energy could even look slightly different in those universes, but the concept would probably be the same. We want to predicate our unit of exchange of economic effort. We want to predicate that on an effortful process that's true and verifiable and pure in a way. And the purest thing is energy expenditure, which is a kind of a vague term. Energy expenditure in our universe, it's energy expenditure based off of CPU resource, like literally feeding CPUs energy, and you're producing a token of value out of that. I mean, their universe could be slightly different. I mean, I don't know. Um, but that's the proposition. So that's the main point of the video. Is I do think that going to the conference and talking with people and discussing with them helps me get a better understanding of what I mean when I'm saying Bitcoin is inevitable, and also helps me come up with something like that. It can tell people Bitcoin's inevitable, or there's a way in thinking which Bitcoin is inevitable. And I think most people would be really shocked to hear that. Again, because most of the media would say that it's just some wasteful, random, accidental shit that happened in 2009. And what I would say is that the exact way in which energy is wasted, not relevant, and the exact like parameters of Bitcoin protocol, not relevant. And at the time when Bitcoin came out, whether it's 2007 or it's 2011 or whatever point in history during other civilizations, um, intellectual awakening, digitization, it doesn't matter how quickly they get to Bitcoin or a Bitcoin like an energy based digital native currency unit. That's what I'm calling Bitcoin. Doesn't matter when they get to it, whether it's 10 years after digitization or 100 years. If we can assume that they would all eventually get to this realization, then there isn't a way in which Bitcoin is inevitable. And part of the reason why this conversation came out more fully is because I was telling people it's the properties of Bitcoin, like the unique properties of Bitcoin, that are important here. And so that a lot of them were confused because they're like, Bitcoin's accidental though, right? Like there's a bunch of things about it that are not seemingly not important. And so in a way I misspoke. What I meant to say is that the divisibility, the scarceness, the stock to flow, the predication on brute energy as being part of the foundation of the energy unit. This is what I mean by the properties of Bitcoin. And what I also mean to say as well is that there could be other versions of Bitcoin that exist on this planet. So there are hard forks. So there literally are hard forks of Bitcoin. There's other versions of Bitcoin, and there's other takes on a proof of work system. Proof of work meaning that you expend a bunch of energy to create the units and secure the network, as opposed to proof of staking, which is a topic for another day. And my point, we do live in the universe right now where there are multiple kind of like competing versions of Bitcoin, and it might be the case that some of them are superior in certain ways, kind of like VHS and Betamax, or Blu-ray and HD DVD. Like some of these technologies, there's probably an objective claim to say this was better, or cassette and A-track, or whatever it was called. There's a claim to be made that no, these technologies are better, and we know from history already that the technologies that are objectively better don't always win. And some of the reasons why they don't win is because they don't have first mover advantage. My point here is not to claim that Bitcoin in its current manifestation is the best proof of work product that's conceptual. In fact, it was the first one, so it's probably likely that we could make a better one. But the proposition here is that it is inevitable that one and only one proof of work network become the mainstay of a peer-to-peer financial system. And I concede that it's likely that whichever one takes that place, specifically if it's one from early days of the development of blockchain technology, or whatever technology prepends the entire energy monetary unit, digital native monetary unit system, it's likely that the first one will probably get a first mover's advantage, and it will be hard for people to implement a second one. And so I do kind of concede in a way, and it was helpful talking with people. I don't think this is a concession. It just helped me get more clear. When I'm talking about Bitcoin being inevitable, or the properties of Bitcoin making it an apex asset, it is not to say that there's no other version of a digital native blockchain-based energy unit monetary system that could beat Bitcoin. There's no reason to think that Bitcoin's the best one ever to be invented. We can't know that. What we can know is that Bitcoin's probably sufficient. That whatever Bitcoin does, it does it well enough, and I like to say it solves a problem millennia in the making on the philosophy of money. It solves that to such a sufficient degree, and this is how evolution works as well. You don't choose for the best organisms. You choose for what works well enough to replicate fast enough and out-replicate the other replicators. This is how the world works. So once you get a system that's that's good enough, that solves the problems well enough, that's sufficient and replicates quickly enough, it can stop potentially better versions from arising. And evolution, you would kind of say, better versions would naturally arise if the selective pressure was sufficient. But if the selective pressure is not sufficient, so if markets are overall happy with Bitcoin and its performance, that there's not a need for, that there's not kind of a niche that some other proof of work system that's superior in certain ways can fill, it will never be accepted. So yeah, I think this is what I mean by the inevitability of Bitcoin. I'm definitely open to Bitcoin being replaced at some point by a superior proof of work system. But interestingly, I think that's been tried a lot by some very smart people because there's a lot of money into it. And it hasn't happened yet. And it seems like the longer we go on with Bitcoin, the more it seems like Bitcoin's price action is likely due to the inevitability of an apex asset derived from CPU energy usage or some sort of energy usage to prepend and to create the foundation of the monetary unit, that there was a need for this apex asset, and Bitcoin sufficiently answers that need such that there will never be another version that outcompetes it. So the longer we go on, and the more people are working on blockchain, understand it and value it, and aren't dismissive of it, and the longer that Bitcoin keeps its dominance, it just kind of goes to show you that Bitcoin was inevitable in some way. And those properties were inevitable. That selecting for at least one blockchain system like this was inevitable. But at the same time, we can understand that this doesn't mean that Bitcoin is the best permutation ever in this universe or any other universe. There's no need to claim that. So, all this conversation, it did help me get a little bit clearer on what I mean by Bitcoin and what I believe. Like when I'm trying to explain why Bitcoin's market cap has gone up, or we're in a Web3 conference or a crypto conference, and most people don't understand the proposition of Bitcoin. Bitcoin Jesus is there to explain to them, spread the good word of Bitcoin. But it really is, for me, it's really interesting. It's kind of like philosophy. It's kind of like talking about religion, which I used to talk to people about a lot, different theists from different denominations, just because it's a bit of a brain tickler, and it's an exchange of ideas and concepts. So hopefully this was interesting. This ramble, this talk. We did talk about the Web3 ecosystem. We did talk about all the innovations that are quite sexy. We did talk about Bitcoin and why I think Bitcoin's inevitable. And we talked about many worlds talk, as well as potential different other advanced or intellectual societies. I described, as I tend to do, what I believe Bitcoin is, and this kind of, and in a way, it's vague and mushy language, but I think it's because you want to talk about concepts like value and energy, which they do have specific meanings in, let's say, physics or philosophy to some extent, but they are more or less colloquially used pretty ambiguously. And I think for this conversation, it's virtuous in a way. Like it's actually appropriate for the conversation. Energy, and to put it simply for me, is like effortfulness. It's like effortful. It's the thing, to use more of a physics term, something that can do work on something else, right? Whether it's electricity or it's kinetic energy with with a muscle or a kind of a spring, elastic energy, or gravitational energy, dropping something and having the gravitational pull, move that item towards mass. It's just energy. It's the ability to do work. It's the unit that's able to do work somewhere. And value is, what is valued. It's what is desired, what is almost like worth fighting for, what is useful. Value is useful, desired, aesthetic. There's many ways in which you could talk about value, but that doesn't make that the term useless. Just like energy isn't useless, just because there's many different ways you could talk about energy. So again, we talked about Bitcoin. We talked about Bitcoin ad nauseum, ad infinitum, about the different ways that you can discuss and describe Bitcoin, how it would describe it. And we talked about how Bitcoin is inevitable and in many worlds talk is likely to be in any universe where there's an advanced civilization, and if not that extreme proposition, then probably any universe where there's that are close to ours in terms of having human-like creatures and beings with a human-like economy and economic history and monetary history. And then the last thing is we talked about how certain technologies are not always the best ones that succeed. But just like evolution, it's not about being the absolute, you know, best configuration, having the best poison, or having the largest talons or claws, or it mostly is just about being able to out replicate other mutants as they arise, and by definition, by being able to out replicate them, it's about being sufficiently adapted to the environment and having such a strong foothold that you don't need to. There's no pressure to that allows a competing phenotype or set of genes to arise and take over and kind of uh, supersede the existing organism in its current environment. And that's how evolution works. And I think we can pretty much view this as Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin is sufficiently addressing the reasons why it's needed: peer-to-peer transfer of money through the most trusted the most trusted digital network the world has ever created, um, with anonymity, relative anonymity, I'd say, and permissionlessness, uh, in such a way that there's no other system right now that can outcompete it. Maybe one day there will be, but for now, it's hard to even imagine. And the longer Bitcoin survives, the more it's cementing itself as being the system that has those attributes and solves that problem to such a degree that there's no requirement for another system. Anyways, a complicated and rambling story. I'll try to add. I did win a pitch competition. I shouldn't say I won, but I got to the second round out of three. Only two teams got to the third round. There was 20 teams to start, 30-second pitches for the top 6 or 7 teams to advance, and then 5-minute pitch decks and kind of talking in order for the top 2 teams to then advance to the final, like, 20-minute deep dives into their projects. And I passed the 30-second one, so I beat enough people there, and that was my whole goal in entering, was to just see if I could pitch this idea that I came up with the idea on Thursday evening, and I presented it on Monday. Most of the other projects were actually, real projects that had started, had teams, and been working on it for a year or two, and I was able to, win that, get to round 2, and then I was able to present round 2, and I think people gave me good feedback on both round 1 and round 2. Definitely on round 1, they were like, "Oh, you killed it!" Like, I was the second best scoring presenter. The scores were a bit kind of ad hoc in a way. The judges were just sitting there and going through 20 people, but I came out second best, so I consider that to be just as valid as first place, because again, the scoring was kind of subjective in a way. And what I mean by subjective is relative to the judges, tiredness, and they're kind of like being distracted or not, because they're sitting through so many of these ultra fast pitches. So I really did well. It gave me confidence that I'm able to speak to a crowd. I'm able to construct also a narrative, and then tell it in such a way that is top tier. And then I got good feedback on my round 2. I mean, my round 2 failed, and I didn't expect to get to round 3 because I didn't actually have a company, and there was a lot of things I couldn't speak to with strong conviction because there's nothing there. There's no product there. But people told me for the slide deck part, although I wasn't quite as coming out confident as well with 30 seconds, which again I practiced 30 seconds. I didn't practice the slide deck at all. They still thought I did a good job. So overall, it gives me confidence. I do have a project that I'm seriously considering now, and I've looked into extensively, called USD Gold. Unfortunately, there is a crypto token named USDG. USD Global is what they're not. It's not based on gold, but there already is one. So I don't know if I have to rename. I might use USGM, which is USG Money. It stands for hard money. But yeah, it's something I'll probably talk about in a video next. And I'm excited about the project, but it's scary. It's scary to kind of think about how to move forward from here with it. But I'm kind of trying to make almost a new financial primitive for a DeFi world, which is a stable coin backed by gold. Tether already has one, actually. I found out, a week after researching this. Tether does have one called AUSDT, Alloy USDT, where alloy means, I guess, like multiple, metals joined together. And right now they're just doing gold. It doesn't seem like it's popped off that hard. So there seems to be still a lot of space in the stable coin backed by gold, not on-chain gold that already exists, but like stable coin backed by gold. It's either a place that's not going to find success, or companies, even ones like Tether, haven't focused on it enough to really figure out how to make it super successful. And yeah, I'll create my video next time just talking about it. It's kind of interesting. All right, that's it for Satoshi Chain. I'm Adam. Thanks for watching. Bitcoin Jesus, thanks you very much. And let's see if I've got this right. May the Bitcoin be with you. All right, take care.